Top of the morning. I wouldn't say this is the best way to start off the week, but this is how we're starting it off nonetheless. We are kicking off the beginning of our week with an Indiana clown show versus the Washington Mystics. We have Stephanie White going all in on the Kelsey Mitchell dribble, never pass.
That frustration you just heard, that's not coming from some casual fan throwing takes on social media. That's coming from someone who's been watching this team closely enough to see the patterns forming. And the pattern he's calling out is about to define whether the Indiana Fever can actually compete this season or whether they're going to waste another year of Caitlin Clark's rookie contract. Because here's what's happening in Indiana right now. The Fever are sitting at a record that should be better. They've got the Rookie of the Year frontrunner. They've got a former #1 overall pick in Aaliyah Boston. They've got legitimate talent on this roster. But they're losing winnable games on the road. And the same issues keep showing up in the fourth quarter. Shot selection, ball movement, or more accurately, the complete absence of ball movement.
Nailed it last game, guys. Even afterwards, you guys have spoken. The people have spoken. We have aired it out. We have exposed this Kelsey Mitchell situation where this woman does not pass the ball to anybody. Stephanie White is clearly okay with it because she refuses to take her out. She refuses to bench her when she won't stop gunning and jacking up shots left and right, left and right.
3 straight road losses. Golden State, Portland, New York. And if you watch those games, you saw the exact same script play out in crunch time. The offense stagnates, one player dominates the ball, bad shots start flying up, and suddenly a close game turns into a frustrating loss, where you're left wondering why the team's best playmaker barely touched the ball in the final 5 minutes. Now Stephanie White came back to Indiana with a reputation. She coached this team before. She knows the organization. She was supposed to bring structure, discipline, and a modern offensive system, but what we're seeing on the court tells a different story. We're seeing hero ball. We're seeing isolation basketball. We're seeing the same player taking contested shots possession after possession, while Caitlin Clark stands in the corner watching. And that brings us to Kelsey Mitchell. Talented scorer, no question. She can get hot and carry an offense for stretches. But there's a difference between being a scorer and being a winning player. There's a difference between getting your shots and running an offense. And right now, the Indiana Fever are learning that difference the hard way.
This is a big game for the Indiana Fever. The Indiana Fever are on the road. They've been atrocious. They've lost their last 3 road games. Golden State, Portland, and New York. 3 bad losses on the road, okay? And now they have to go to Washington to take on the Mystics, and they have a head coach who just crashed out, and he's not going to be looking to lose again. He crashed out. This dude had to get escorted out by police. He's not trying to lose again today. I'm going to let you know that right now. Now, in order for the Indiana Fever to actually...
Let's talk about what actually happened in that New York game, because this is where the frustration becomes legitimate. Fourth quarter, game on the line. The Fever need buckets, and Kelsey Mitchell goes into full isolation mode. Dribble, dribble, dribble. Contested shot. Miss. Next possession. Same thing. Dribble, dribble, dribble. Contested shot. Miss. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, who's been efficient all game, who's got the hot hand from 3, who's one of the best playmakers in the league, barely gets a touch. Here's the specific stat that should alarm everyone in that organization. In the fourth quarter of the New York loss, Caitlin Clark didn't attempt her first shot until there was 1 minute left in the game. 1 minute. That's not an accident. That's not bad luck. That's a systematic failure of offensive execution. That's a coach either not calling plays for her best player or not holding other players accountable when they ignore the game plan. And this is where Stephanie White's decisions become questionable, because we've seen what happens when Caitlin Clark goes into hero ball mode. White calls a timeout. She sits on the sideline with her arms crossed. She makes it clear that's not acceptable. But when Kelsey Mitchell does the exact same thing, when she's jacking up bad shots possession after possession, there's no timeout, there's no benching, there's no accountability. The message that sends to the locker room is crystal clear, and it's not a healthy message.
That had tunnel vision, that couldn't pass the ball to nobody. It was Kelsey Mitchell. Her X button on the controller, that's how you pass. Her X button was not working. She act like her pass button was broken. The first thing for the Indiana Fever to win this game is going to be getting Kelsey Mitchell under control and playing team basketball. You are not at LA Fitness. You are not at the YMCA. You are not at 24-hour fitness. Play legitimate professional team basketball, Kelsey Mitchell. You don't have to jack it up every single time you touch it.
Now let's talk about the Washington Mystics matchup, because this game is a perfect test case for everything we've been discussing. The Mystics have already beaten Indiana once this season. They've got size. Shakira Austin, Kiki Finn, Lauren Betts coming off the bench at 6'7". This is a team built to dominate in the paint and control the glass. The last time these teams played, Aaliyah Boston had 1 rebound in the entire first half. 1. For a former #1 pick who's supposed to be a dominant interior presence, that's unacceptable. And it put the entire burden on Caitlin Clark to try and shoot the Fever back into the game from the perimeter. She did her part, she caught fire from 3, but it wasn't enough because the supporting cast didn't show up, and the offensive system broke down in crunch time. So what needs to happen for Indiana to win this game? First, they need ball movement. Actual ball movement. Not one player dribbling for 20 seconds and then forcing a shot. They need to run actions. They need to set screens. They need to involve multiple players in the offense, so the defense has to respect everyone on the floor. Second, they need to get Caitlin Clark more touches in advantageous positions. If you're going to take her off ball, which is already questionable given her playmaking ability, then you need to run actual plays to get her open looks, not just having her set a screen at the elbow and pop out to the three-point line. Every team in the league knows that's coming. You need movement. You need misdirection. You need to create confusion for the defense.
She needs the ball in her hands. When the ball is not in her hands, there needs to be actions and plays run to get her open. We can't go the whole fourth quarter with Caitlin Clark, not getting her first shot until 1 minute left in the fourth quarter. That is ridiculous. That makes no sense. That is malpractice. That is sabotage, and we all see it. The third thing, Aaliyah Boston's going to have to actually show up and play big. You had an absolute meltdown. Okay, you were getting $6 million. The last time Aaliyah Boston went against Shakira.
Third point, and this is crucial. Aaliyah Boston needs to show up like a max contract player. She's making $6 million. She was the #1 overall pick. She won Rookie of the Year last season. But against physical teams with size, she's been getting outplayed. Shakira Austin dominated her last time. Kiki Finn was more effective. Even Lauren Betts coming off the bench had more impact in limited minutes. Boston needs to establish position early. She needs to be aggressive on the offensive glass. She needs to finish through contact. Because if she's not a factor in the paint, if she's not controlling the boards, then the Fever don't have an answer for Washington's size advantage. It's that simple. Fourth, the role players need to understand their roles. This is where things get interesting, because role definition is critical for winning basketball. Sophie Cunningham is on this team to shoot threes and play defense. Not to be a primary ball handler. Not to be looking off Caitlin Clark when she's open. Raven Johnson is on this team for her defensive intensity and her ability to push pace in transition. She's not on this team to be a volume shooter. And this is where coaching matters. Stephanie White needs to make these roles crystal clear. She needs to have the hard conversations. She needs to say, look, when Caitlin's open, she gets the ball. When we need a bucket in crunch time, we're running our offense through our best players. That's not complicated. That's basic winning basketball. But it requires a coach who's willing to establish that hierarchy and enforce it.
The fourth thing, the role players have to be role players and understand their role players for the Indiana Fever. Sophie Cunningham, I'm watching you look off Caitlin Clark a little bit too much. Raven Johnson, you need to stop shooting so damn much. You couldn't shoot in high school. You couldn't shoot in college. Now all of a sudden you coming over here jacking up shots. Remember why you're here, for defense, not for you to be just jacking up shots. I understand teams are kind of playing 4-on-5 on defense because they're not really guarding you, but they're leaving you open for a reason, Raven. You have to know that. They're leaving you open for a reason. We don't need you looking off Caitlin Clark. We don't need you doing all of that. We don't need.
Fifth point, the Fever have to stop fouling at such a ridiculous rate. And this isn't just about individual discipline. This is about team defense. This is about help defense. When you watch the tape, so many of these fouls happen because players are getting left on islands. Caitlin Clark picked up her 5th foul against New York because Lexi Hall didn't take one step over to help cut off the driving lane. If Hall shows her body, if she rotates over and walls off that lane, Clark doesn't have to reach. She doesn't have to foul. This is a systemic issue. The Fever aren't playing connected defense. They're not communicating. They're not helping each other. And that forces individual players into desperation situations where they have to foul to prevent an easy basket. Fix the team defense. Improve the communication. And a lot of these foul problems solve themselves. Now here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the Indiana organization wants to acknowledge. Despite all of these issues, despite the questionable rotations and the stagnant offense and the lack of accountability, the Fever still have enough talent to win this game against Washington. They should win this game. Washington is sitting at 4-5. They're desperate. Their coach just got ejected and had to be escorted out by police. This is a team in turmoil. But talent alone doesn't win games. Coaching matters. Game planning matters. Adjustments matter. And that's where the concern comes in. Because based on what we've seen so far this season, there's no indication that Stephanie White is going to make the necessary adjustments.
Actually show your body, move your feet and your body and get in the lanes and help cut off the lanes and help your teammates. They wouldn't be forced to slap at the ball and reach and foul. A lot of these fouls are coming because you are leaving your teammates on islands and you're not playing team defense and helping one another. So I believe in order to help with the fouls, you guys need to help each other more on defense and be more of a unit defensively. And I think those 5 things will give the Indiana Fever an excellent opportunity to actually win this game. But unfortunately, I don't believe it'll happen. I think Kelsey Mitchell's going to be running around jacking up.
Think about what he just said there. He's not predicting the Fever will lose because they lack talent. He's predicting they'll lose because the coaching staff won't put that talent in position to succeed. That's a damning assessment. And unfortunately, it's hard to argue with based on the evidence. Look at the pattern. Game after game, the same issues appear. Kelsey Mitchell dominates the ball in the fourth quarter. Bad shots go up. Caitlin Clark gets frozen out. The offense stagnates. And Stephanie White doesn't call a timeout to reset. She doesn't make a substitution to change the energy. She just lets it play out, and the Fever lose a winnable game. At some point, you have to ask, is this incompetence or is this intentional? Is Stephanie White genuinely unable to see what's happening on the court, or is there something else going on? Because when you watch Caitlin Clark get hot, when she's knocking down threes and getting the crowd into it, and then you watch White's body language on the sideline, it doesn't look like a coach who's excited her player is taking over. It looks like a coach who's uncomfortable with it. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. Because if your coach isn't fully committed to maximizing your best player's impact, if there's any hesitation or resistance or ego involved, you're never going to reach your ceiling as a team. And right now, the Indiana Fever are nowhere near their ceiling.
To change of some sort, whether it's Caitlin Clark being moved or this entire front office being shown the door and being handed their pink slips of being fired. And I'm fine with either way that it goes. That's my prediction for this game. I think Stephanie White is going to absolutely screw the pooch again today. This lady don't know what she's doing. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think. This Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.
So let's talk about what happens if this pattern continues. Let's talk about the realistic outcomes if Stephanie White keeps running the same system, keeps allowing the same shot selection, keeps freezing out Caitlin Clark in crunch time. Outcome 1. The Fever continue to lose winnable games. They finish with a mediocre record. They make the playoffs as a low seed and get bounced in the first round. That's the optimistic scenario, by the way. That's assuming they can even maintain their current level of play without things getting worse. Outcome 2. The losses pile up, the frustration builds, and the locker room starts to fracture. You think Caitlin Clark is going to stay quiet if this continues all season? You think she's going to be okay with standing in the corner watching Kelsey Mitchell chuck up bad shots while her assist numbers tank and her usage rate drops? At some point, there's going to be a conversation, and that conversation is either going to result in change, or it's going to result in a rift that defines this franchise for years. Outcome 3, and this is the one that should terrify Indiana's front office. Caitlin Clark starts thinking about her future. She's got 4 years on her rookie contract, but after that she's a free agent. And if these 4 years are defined by poor coaching, by being underutilized, by watching inferior players take shots she should be taking, why would she stay? Why would she commit long-term to an organization that didn't maximize her talent during her prime years? The WNBA is changing. Players have more leverage now. The top stars can choose where they want to play. And if Indiana fumbles this opportunity, if they waste Caitlin Clark's rookie contract because they couldn't figure out how to build a competent offensive system around her, that's organizational malpractice. That's a fireable offense for everyone involved. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because there are 2 ways this situation resolves itself. Either the coaching staff gets replaced, or Caitlin Clark gets moved. And before you say that's crazy, before you say Indiana would never trade their franchise player, remember that organizations make terrible decisions all the time, especially when there's ego involved. Especially when there's a power struggle between what the coach wants and what's actually best for the team. Think about it from the front office perspective. They hired Stephanie White. They brought her back specifically to coach this team. They gave her the keys. If she fails, if the team underperforms, that reflects badly on the people who hired her. So there's institutional pressure to make it work, to give her time, to support her vision even when the results aren't there. But at the same time, Caitlin Clark is the most popular player in women's basketball. She's driving ratings. She's selling tickets. She's the face of the franchise. If it becomes clear that there's a fundamental incompatibility between her and the coaching staff, If the choice comes down to keeping Stephanie White or keeping Caitlin Clark happy, the answer should be obvious. But obvious doesn't always win in organizational politics. And that's what makes this situation so precarious. Because every loss that follows the same pattern, every fourth quarter where Caitlin Clark gets frozen out, every game where Kelsey Mitchell is allowed to play hero ball without consequences, that's evidence. That's data. And at some point, that data becomes undeniable. At some point, even the most stubborn front office has to admit there's a problem. The question is, how long does it take? How many losses have to pile up before change happens? How many winnable games does Indiana have to throw away before someone in that organization says enough is enough? Because here's the reality. This team should be better than their record indicates. They have the talent. They have the pieces. What they don't have is a coherent offensive system that maximizes those pieces. What they don't have is accountability for players who consistently make poor decisions. What they don't have is a coach who's willing to adjust when something isn't working. And until those things change, until there's a fundamental shift in how this team operates, the results are going to stay the same. Close losses, frustrating fourth quarters, wasted opportunities. That's not a recipe for building a championship contender. That's a recipe for mediocrity. And mediocrity with a generational talent like Caitlin Clark on your roster is unacceptable. So watch this Washington game closely. Watch what happens in the fourth quarter. Watch whether Stephanie White makes adjustments. Watch whether Kelsey Mitchell shows any willingness to move the ball. Watch whether Caitlin Clark gets meaningful touches down the stretch. Because this game isn't just about winning or losing. It's about whether this coaching staff is capable of learning from their mistakes. It's about whether they're willing to change their approach when the current approach clearly isn't working. And if they're not, if we see the same patterns play out again, if Kelsey Mitchell goes rogue in the fourth quarter while Caitlin Clark stands in the corner, then we'll have our answer. We'll know this isn't going to get better on its own. We'll know that change is coming, one way or another. Either the coaching staff changes, or the roster changes, or this franchise continues to spin its wheels, while their generational talent's rookie contract slowly ticks away. That's what's at stake here. Not just one game against Washington. Not just one more loss in a season that's already been frustrating. But the entire trajectory of this franchise. The entire future of what could have been a dynasty, if they just figured out how to get out of their own way. So yeah, this matters. This game matters. These decisions matter. And if you're a Fever fan, if you've invested your time and energy into supporting this team, you should be paying attention. You should be asking questions. You should be demanding better. Because the talent is there. The potential is there. What's missing is the leadership to unlock it. And that's on Stephanie White. That's on the coaching staff. That's on the front office. And if they can't figure it out, if they can't make the necessary changes, then they don't deserve to keep coaching a player like Caitlin Clark. What do you think happens in this Washington game? Do you think Stephanie White finally makes the adjustments? Or are we going to see the same frustrating patterns play out again? Drop your prediction in the comments, and let me know if you think this coaching staff deserves more time,